So completely unrelated to this podcast, I just have to say, I found this little rubber ball on the floor of my office. The dog was chewing on it, and I kept it around on my desk for like a month because I didn't know where the fuck it was. It's it goes on the bottom of my podcast recording microphone, and I just threw it away last week because I was like, I'm tired of hoarding this. It's going, and now today as I prepared to get on with you, I was like, son of a bitch,
Oh no.
the little rubber
Junie.
ball. I know. Like, how did I don't even know how she got. Anyway, kids and dogs, man. Kids and
Yeah.
dogs.
Oh my gosh, I know, kids and dogs. My kid this morning was an absolute nightmare.
It happens. It's
It
part of the deal.
happens.
That's why they make them cute. That's why God makes them cute, because otherwise you would just open the door and be like, get the fuck out of my house. I do. Kids and dogs. It's biological. Okay.
Seriously.
Okay, so we're talking today about how you're the reason I came up with the healing past life karma with your SPs session. You are
Yes.
it, Chelsea. And so that's what we're talking about. Like, first of all, I record anybody's session and send them a link if they ask me. So that's a good reminder to anyone listening that you have to ask if you want to do that, because sometimes I forget. But I did that for this one and I never sent you the link.
I thought about that after the fact and I was like, okay, I need to ask her to do that because I
I
want to
will,
relive that.
yeah, and
Okay,
it's
cool.
there, but it's kind of good because that means for as we talk about this today, it'll be more like what stuck out for you versus so yeah, we're going to talk about like what that was. And the backstory of it for me is that Chelsea asked me if I could do this specific thing in a shamanic healing session, and I went, well, yeah, that's not really a shamanic healing session, but yeah, that's the thing I could do. So on my booking site, I don't really explain it good, and that's what I kind of want to talk about, so like people can understand how it helped you and what it was. And because on my site, all it says is healing past life karma with your SP, meaning significant person. Explore past lives with your key X's, plural, in order to understand the meaning and who to date in the future. I mean, and this isn't just for single people, but I don't know. Do you want to just start by talking about what you asked me in the first place and
Yeah.
kind of what it ended up being for you?
Yeah, so I was very curious about, two of my significant exes in particular, and I guess I'll back up by saying, like, with both of them, I had felt like some kind of soul recognition when I first met them. And they've each been very impactful to my life in different ways. And one of them is actually no longer with us. And so I just think I was very curious about when we had met previously in past lives, how our paths had crossed, if they had, and then like all together and individually. So I had said to Angela, like, can you please, is this possible? Like, can we be specific, or does the healing not work that way? You just like get what you get. And yeah, you were like, no, we can definitely be specific. And then when we actually signed on for the session, we both kind of decided like, hey, let's make this a little bit more of like a discussion versus like, the laying down and doing the healing part. And I actually really liked that aspect, because I had to be intentional about like what I'm looking to get from it in the moment, which like you had me focus on. And at first I didn't really know. But I think, yeah, just thinking about what specifically I wanted to know,
Yeah,
and how it
and
would help me.
yeah, and to back up, so for anyone listening that's never had a shamanic healing session, those are
Yeah.
90 minutes, and we start out by talking. And we talk about a hook that's plaguing you, and then when you blow your energy into one of my kuyas, my medicine stones, and then when you're good and emotional, you lay down on your back in your bed or on your couch with a camera on you in meditation, while I work on you energetically on the massage table behind me. So you're zoned out, and I'm not talking to you for the bulk of that 90 minutes. Like
Mhm.
you will have visions and inner awarenesses come up for you, or maybe you'll just lay there, maybe you'll go to sleep, I don't know, whenever, everyone's different. Most people have things come to them, or you have ancestors come to you, or spirit guides, or you see a past life. Maybe like
Yeah.
my first shamanic healing someone did on me that I didn't even think I believed in past lives. I saw a bunch of my past lives and I was like, whoa. And I know when I see clients for the first time that happens and it's really
Yes.
clear, I'm like, this might be your path too. So,
Yes.
but like, so that's where it's different versus this one. Chelsea had done enough of them for me or with me. And then she's also learned how to journey in my classes on her own, that we were like, okay, in your case, I'm going to journey to look at this stuff. You just sit there. Don't
Yeah.
go to sleep. We still use the stone. And
Yes.
I held onto the stone when I journeyed. It had her energy in it. But because Chelsea already knew how to journey, I had her go to the lower world and talk with her spirit guides while I was doing the work. If somebody didn't know how to journey, I would just kind of have them close their eyes in meditation and zone out, but sitting up. And then those are quick journeys for me, just like a few minutes. And then I come back and I talk about what I saw on that. So I just wanted to interject like the
Yeah.
difference like of what you're saying. So it was more like I would journey, I would come back and talk, I would journey. So like this is for someone who wants to understand the story and look at soul contracts with a specific people in your life, to help heal your relationships with those people.
Yeah.
It's not going to move a whole bunch of energy. This is for if you've already moved a lot of your own energy and done a lot of healing work around something, but you just have specific questions about this relationships that stuck. Like, I think this is a better fit, right, than just like dealing with a whole shamanic healing about. I mean, if you're really sad and stuck in an emotion because of a theme or a hook, then you want a shamanic healing. But when it's specific about people and you just want answers and clarity, I think that's the difference, right, Chelsea? What do you say?
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I think, and to your point, like because I had moved a lot of that energy previously and we had done a couple sessions before, like even though I also know how to journey, I think this is really important and like easy for someone who has done some of the work but is curious to like hone in on things specifically and maybe a little bit intimidated by like doing the full on like making contact with some of the energy or like
Yeah.
you have to be open to it of course, but I think yeah, it's a little bit of like a stepping stone between curiosity and like the healing aspect. It's on a bit more of like an intellectual level, at least for me, and that like I liked that. I didn't, it wasn't intimidating, um and I
Is
could
some of
more.
wait, is some of it intimidating? What's been intimidating for you as far as the work with me? I'm just curious. I just don't know.
No, yeah. So I think, you know what it is? I think I sometimes get in my head, like with even with meditation in general, I think, when you somebody who's constantly in your head, overthinking all things, it can be hard to like let that guard down and find that quietness. But what I love about my sessions with you is that I've been able to get there. It's not easy for me to get there, in general. I can get there, but I have such a trust for like the way that you do the work that I think that that's part of it because I know that opening up my energy to you is safe. And obviously we built that trust, but even in the first session that I had, my first shamanic session, I mean, the physical energy that was like pulsating through my body, and we did it via Zoom because I'm in New York, was honestly one of the most intense things I've ever experienced, but in the best way. Now, if you are like not prepared for that or you don't know what to expect, I think that can be intimidating.
That actually happened. It's so funny because some of my clients that are the most leery, that's the thing I hear. They're like, why did I feel tingling in my body? Like because my whole practice is on Zoom. And I'll say that because that's the dense energy moving out and then
Yep.
the light filling those voids. And it does feel like when your arm falls asleep and it's waking back up or like, so that's people will say that and they'll say, well, what were you doing like around my belly? And I'm like, okay, so I was removing crystallized energy there. And they're like, I felt it, so
Yes.
or sometimes I'll say it first and then they'll say that's where. So yeah, it is crazy, but I think that's why sometimes people, when I tell them what I do, they're like, how do you know it's real? I'm like, if you like this, my life should be a reality show. If you saw behind the scenes all the work I do on people and the stories you'd be like, oh, you can't make it up. Like, I'm not smart
No.
enough to be, and I don't have, me because you're friends enough to know that my life, when I get off camera from making any content, I am not even thinking about any of this stuff for any clients. I don't look up anyone before. I don't even know who I'm getting on
No.
Zoom with before I get on Zoom. And I am taking care of my son or waitressing or cleaning my house or laying out in the grass or swimming. Like I'm not.
Yep. Yep,
So,
exactly. And that even in this recent session that we did, with the specificity around the SPs, I don't even know if you remember that, but after you journeyed for the first time,
oh
when
yeah.
you came back up, yeah, and you were like, so what's with the rafting? And I was like, my jaw like hit the floor. I was like, and to your point, I mean, there
Wait,
is
but
no,
tell that
yeah,
story. Yeah.
yes. So there was no way you could have known. But okay, so the backstory is, I'll use Dan's name because
Yeah.
he's no longer with us, doesn't
Yeah.
matter. So Dan was my partner for, almost 14 years. We have a daughter together. He passed away in 2020, unexpectedly. And just, that's kind of what sparked my spiritual journey, I would say. But uh, every year for as long as he has, a really great group of friends. There was like 25 of them that kept in touch after college, kids, marriages, whatever, moving across the country. They would go rafting on the Delaware. And Dan looked forward to this every single year. I am not an outdoorsy kind of girl. So it was like, and the joke was it was always around my birthday. So I was like, all right, whatever. I don't care. We'll do something else for my birthday. But I never went because I did not enjoy rafting at all, or camping or anything. Yeah, like the outdoors. So when you brought that up, I was like, that is so specific and something that, like, again, it's not on Facebook. It's not something you could research. And even in knowing you now, better, I have never mentioned
No.
that.
And even
Because
if you
it's
had, I wouldn't have, I don't remember things about people. Like I'm really bad at remembering anything about it.
exactly. Well, I was just gonna say it's like so specific, but also so irrelevant. So the
Yeah.
fact that, like, because it's not really relevant to me. So yeah, for anyone questioning if it's real, I about fell off my chair.
Wait, I just have to explain what happened on my side too, because I teach
Yes.
you guys how to journey, and this is such a good when I teach you guys how to journey and trust your intuition, this is such a good example because as those of us that have gone through the shamanic medicine, we'll deal with this during that time of just leaning in to the craziest things you see when you get down to the lower world being the most accurate. And so I always name them. So that day my son and I had just rewatched Avatar Way of the Water the night before. Okay, so there's a lot of water in that movie. And I was journeying, and as much as I do this for a living, and I know it gets reflected back, there's parts of me that is like left brain analytical that's like, this is all bullshit. Like, this is
Yeah.
not, how is this real? Is it me? Is it me being so good at reading people that I'm coming up with a story to help you? Like, I don't know,
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but this is how I know it's not, because that day, so I start in my place of power and I'm journeying the lower world and everything is water. Okay. Now, let me just say this. My place of power, the way it looks sometimes is an indication of what's going on with the person. But when it looks really different, sometimes I'm like, is this because I'm off? Like, what's going on? I start to worry it's me. And then I'm like, just trust it, right? So everything's water. I mean, my place of power starts out in a lake anyway. So I journey, there's water going down to the lower world. That's different for me. There's just water everywhere. I get in, and then in the Peruvian traditions, Muki is the gatekeeper, right, at the lower world. Mookie's there. I'm like, why is all this water? And he was like, it's Chelsea's. And I was like, okay,
Mhm.
so I was like, all right, so this is part of her story. So then we go look, and there's 2 past lives of like whitewater rafting and canoeing and rapids and like death and trauma with you and Dan having to do with rivers and water. And I'm like, okay, but I'm still, as I come back up, like, fuck, I always do this thing in my head where I'm like, I don't want to fucking say this to her, because what if this is because I watched Avatar? Like, this is fucking, why do I have this job? Like, walking
Yeah.
the shamanic path isn't that different than anything else. Like, am I fucking crazy? This is whatever, Andrew, but I know you pay me to do this and tell you what I see.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter
Right.
if it's right, wrong, or indifferent. Half the time when you guys do shit, I'm like, I don't even know why you guys come to me, because this is weird, but whatever. I'm just a conduit. I'm not attached to it. So I
Yeah.
come back up and I tell you, and that's when you were like,
Oh my God. It absolutely blew my mind. And I think, this is what I love about you though, is that you're so honest with like, listen, I'm human too.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's good, bad, or indifferent. But I think like just going slightly off topic for a moment, like that is so important. And that is why, people come to you, because it's honest and it's real and it's vulnerable, and you don't claim to be, just like holier than thou. And I'm a healer and I know everything. And I think that's such an admirable quality. And like I said, why so many people come to you. And also, I mean, for me personally, like what really helped me trust you, trust the process, allow you, to kind of have access to me and my energy, because it just felt so genuine.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Well,
when,
I mean, they teach you that going through the shamanic medicine wheel too. Like, I'm not a shaman. Okay.
yeah,
Shaman are the people like for in the Peruvian traditions, they live in the Andes mountains. Their whole life is about service and shamanism. And you have to live on the outskirts of town. You can't be as integrated with society. Like that's your whole life is connecting with the earth. I have spent probably a total of 2 months time at retreat learning traditions from a real shaman and from Amy, who's been doing this 20 years and has traveled the world learning shamanism. But that makes me a shamanic practitioner. And so I think for me is my path has been like, how do I use this knowledge and integrate it for normal people in the US and Canada mostly, to adapt it to our modern lives. You know what I mean? And I think this session you brought up is a good example of this. Like,
yes, totally. And I think, right. I think it helps like normal people kind of, again, I think as we said, you have to have some openness and willingness
yeah,
to, and having done some of the work previously. But I don't think, you have to be in such a place where you're like, okay, I got my shit together and now I just want to
no.
explore a little further, right?
Well,
Like,
and even if you've never done a shamanic healing and you just want to do this, that's fine. Like that
yeah.
could be whatever. Okay, so tell the story of what that meant for you when I came back with the river stuff.
Yeah. So when you came back with the river stuff, for me, that I had wanted to know where Dan had first, crossed paths. And you had explained after, journeying on that we had 3 past lives together. And in the first life, we were cousins. That was, nothing really super significant, just kind of like how our souls first met. But in the second and the third life, we were best friends, male best friends. And I guess I'm like, I don't know the order of operations here, but essentially, like in the second life, we went canoeing, and we had gotten a map from someone that was a bad map, and that's why we had died. We fell off like a cliff on the river that we weren't expecting to run into, and we died. And in that life, we had left behind women and children, like wives and children. And that was super significant for me, even before learning about the third life, because that's, I'm stuck here now, and Dan has passed again in this life. We were partners, and obviously I'm female, he was male. But it really resonated with me because you had also said to me, you guys had this pact. It was like you and me for eternity. And I started laughing because I literally have I love you now and forever tattooed on my wrist in this lifetime in his handwriting from a card that he gave me. So there was like, I mean, already several points that I was like, this just is insane, first of all, but it felt true to me on like an intuitive level. And so I think that even helps you get further into it. Like you're like, okay, you the person on the other side are just like open and vulnerable. And it only got better from there. In the third life, I think this is where we meet my other significant person, my other SP.
Well, he was in both of them, but yeah, I'll let you tell it.
Yeah, so that's right. He wasn't both of them. I forgot that they just said it. So we'll call him C. So C, I'll back up to what you said about Dan's energy. Dan, adventurous, traveler, kind, like warm-hearted, just a fun, good, gentle kind of guy with his aura. But Steve's aura, like I just keep getting like swindler, like he just
That's
got
right.
this
He was.
like
He's a swindler
swindler
archetype.
energy.
Yeah, he just is. He's the problem. But some people's souls sign up to be that, you know?
Yeah,
I mean, that's an
yeah,
archetype we need. Everyone has their own type of archetypal energy. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So in the second life, with Dan and I, he was the person who gave us the bad map, and it wasn't like you explained. It's not like he was like, "Oh, I'm trying to kill these people," but
No, but he was a
essentially,
swindler. Like he just was trying to
yeah,
make money. He was like, "Oh, you're adventurers. You're coming here for the first time. I have a map of the river. Here you go." Like not just selfishly because he wanted money. And
right,
then you
exactly.
guys followed it, and ultimately because you didn't know what was around the river bend, it led you to your death because you trusted a map that was wrong.
Exactly. And then in the third life, we were going rafting, and Steve, Dan, and I were all again really good friends. And Steve, in typical fashion, even in this life, was hungover, and he was like, "Guys, I'm not going. I can't. I'm shot. Just go without me." And so we did. And because we didn't have like that third person to kind of distribute the weight in the raft, the waters were rougher than we expected. And same thing, we had fallen over like, a cliff and, fell into the water and we both died. And again, we left behind, wives and children. And so the dynamic, I think, in this life with C and Dan and I, like I had met Steve at a time when Dan and I were taking a little bit of a break in our relationship. It was very like, we had been together I think 7 years at that point, and I went out to a place that I never go out to, stayed out. It was very uncharacteristic of a night. But when I saw Steve, he was a bartender at the place that I had gone to that night. I was just like, I felt like I had known him my whole life. I wasn't scared, worried, intimidated. It was like we picked up where we left off. And that truly, in addition to Dan passing, was the reason and what sparked me asking this question and wanting to book this session, because it's a feeling that I've never forgotten.
Yeah.
And you confirmed basically that we've certainly met in other lives. I've had 12 past lives, I think you said, with C, and
Yeah.
he's been the protagonist for me in nearly all of them.
Yeah, I have one ex that was the same, who's also my ex that was like that actually passed last year. And after he passed, because I know he came to me and then I was able to help him cross over this whole other story. But yeah, essentially that was what he said too. He was like, I am the fucking problem. I'm supposed to come here and stir up a bunch of shit for everyone's soul's development. Like sometimes we need a protagonist, right, in our story.
Yeah.
And there are souls that sign up to do that. And it doesn't mean, and that's why you can both, like, I don't know, I've always said that I was like in my 20s when I realized like bad guys don't walk around looking like the Hamburglar, they're not like,
It's
it's not
such a
like
good point.
obvious, like they look like good loving people because they are in their soul, but they've signed up to be this person in this life. So it's hard, especially I think those of us that are intuitive at a young age. I mean, you might say that it's because we had bad guy parents in the way of narcissists or alcoholics, like not necessarily terrible on purpose, but like just they have their own shit.
Yeah.
And so that we don't know how to notice when someone's a bad guy. But I mean, it's also, I think if you're really intuitive, you're going to see the higher self in everyone, the most healed
Yes.
version of them. Cause like, that's what you have to do to hold space to do like the work I do. And then
Yes.
you miss the protagonist part sometimes.
Yes. It's such a good point. It's almost like, I feel like as a society always say, yeah, bad things happen to good people, right? But when you are the person who the bad things are happening to, it's a much different thing, right? And
Yeah.
so to your point, like, bad guys don't necessarily, walk around looking like the hamburglar, as you said, but
No.
and when you are doing this work and yeah, it's just I haven't really thought about it like that, but it's so true, because there was something, and we've talked about this before, about how you can have a soul's remembrance, but the feeling that it gives you is usually either some kind of like butterflies, which is really
Mhm.
like your anxiety warning you, probably,
Yeah.
definitely, or it can feel like a calm, hey, I've known you forever. It's very easy, like a friendship kind of way. And, in hindsight, when I met Dan, it was that like friendship. I feel like I've known you. There was no butterflies. It was just easy. And I loved him from like the moment I saw him. With C, it was like in hindsight, it was adventurous. It was like, ooh, I'm like riled up by this person. Like it
Activated. Yeah.
activated. There was a lot of sexual energy, like, so I've learned the difference of the two now, but I feel like even in this session that we did together, explored that a little bit and reflected on those feelings and kind of just those moments, because again, that's really the remembrance of that is kind of what sparked the deeper questions and wanting to explore where and how we all intersected. But it's a really good point that no one really walks around looking like a villain,
Yeah.
and
And
how you.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I just think so for me, this is what I want to kind of circle it back to. For me personally, and I think for you, so like I always say, I think we all start out wanting to know past lives with partners, because we're nosy or because we want to hear some fairy tale. But
Yeah.
ultimately, for some of us, the reason, and remember, shamanism is connecting with spirit with the intent of healing. For some of us, like hearing that this person's always going to be and always has been a menace and a protagonist is like, oh, thank fucking God I can move on now, right? Like, isn't that
Yes.
what kind of helped you? Like, oh,
Yes.
this is not my like twin flame, or if it is, or if that's real, fine. But this is not
Right.
someone that I will ever settle down with because their soul chose to just irritate the shit out of me. So when I want to learn or be triggered, it's a great person to call because they're going to
Yep.
have some shit that they can bring up. But like, if I actually just want to stop doing the work right now and go live a nice life, this is not the fucking person.
Exactly. Exactly. It's so true. And I think, when you had asked me initially what I wanted to get out of it or what it was going to help me solve in this life, like whatever answers that
Yeah.
I got before you even had journeyed. And I struggled with it a little bit, to your point. Like, is this, my ego just wanting to be like, hey, yeah, this is your twin flame or whatever the hell it is, like kind of justify some of the things that I've felt and been through. And ironically, the justification is really what I got, but in a way that I didn't expect. So for
Yeah.
me, it really provided clarity. It gave me, again, that justification, that sense of like, yeah, this is kind of what I knew it was all along. But it also gave me the permission, I think, for myself to be like, okay, I don't, as you say, have to be stuck with this person. I can go on and live a happy life. It was acceptance, justification, and validation, really, for me to move forward peacefully. But the human part of us that wants to know the why for the things was satisfied as well. And so I think that's just such a important connection, because I think a lot of times when we embark on our spiritual journeys, it's the human side that wants to like quest that thirst for knowledge and make sense of things.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, this did that in a way that I didn't expect, but that honestly was much better than I could have ever anticipated.
Yes. But and then talk about the soul contract part, I guess, too, right? Like, because that was a pivotal part.
Yeah. So when with Dan and I, when we had talked about when I had gotten hurt, yeah. So I
Well,
think it was
that
in our.
and well, because I was that river no, it was the canoeing life too. You guys were like explorers, and wasn't it like
Yes,
you had a soul contract in that life that you were like, you and me for eternity, like we're gonna do
eternity.
this, we're gonna explore
Yes,
the world together. And like,
yes.
so
And
that
then,
ultimately ended up binding you as a soul contract. Oh, because weren't you bleeding? Like you got hurt
yes,
too? So it was a blood
yes,
pact.
it was a blood pact. And that was like, right, like I had gotten really hurt and he had helped me up. We were pretty young and like, literally grabbed me by the hand and pulled me out. And it was basically like, I will, like you and me for eternity, like we'll always be
That's
together,
fire.
always be there for each other. And as I said, I have that tattoo, I love you now and forever, tattooed on my wrist in this life. And again, like, I mean, you can't know that. So it was really, but that it made sense almost, like, 'cause there was this bond, and even though now he's passed, I still very much felt that connection and love, which is a good thing, right? And you had said to me, you're like, okay, I think we need to like rewrite this soul contract a little bit, but you're like, it doesn't take away the love. Like that is not possible. The love
Yeah.
is, infinite, and that nobody can touch that, right? And that was comforting for me because, you yeah, you just hear that, you're like, wait, what does it mean? I'm never going to see this person again in the next life or whatever. And that's not the case. It just, I think, especially in this case, and I don't know, maybe even if both people are still living, I know you can rewrite the soul contract regardless, but I think in this case, because he's no longer here, I was really scared to have that happen. And also I couldn't quell that anxiety, God forbid, and be like, hey, so, I'm going to text him and see if he still likes me. So it was like a little bit nerve-wracking. But when you went back down, and this for me, I think, I got very emotional. When you went back down, you're like, okay, I'm going to go talk to your souls, and, just we're going to rewrite this. I remember you saying that he was a little bit hesitant and I was hesitant, but you reassured us again that like the love doesn't go anywhere. And what did he say to you?
Remember,
Like I got,
he said, remind her. No, I was like, okay, so, well, let me remind. What
yeah,
happened was I went down to rewrite it, and um ultimately these soul contracts are problematic, especially when we do a blood pact, because they don't end when you die. They stay with your higher self, and your so essentially, for the folks at home that haven't heard me give this standard speech before, you reside in the upper world as your higher self. Your higher self is up in the upper world, and then a piece of you incarnates down to earth when you are born as a baby. And then when you die, you return to your higher self, and then a different piece of you incarnates in the next life. So you're all made of the same stuff, but it's different iterations of you, of course, and you choose it all. That's what shamans believe. So that being said, when you make these blood oaths and in the way of a soul contract, it sticks with you in every life. And so even if you and your soul family decided in this life, this person's going to be my husband, you're just going to be a neighbor or whatever, blah, blah, I believe that the blood pact overrides it. And so that's why sometimes you cannot let go of someone who's just not healthy for you in this life, or something's not wrong, or they die or whatever. And it's not no longer what's best for your higher self, right? So that's kind of the case sometimes, where it's not helpful. Like the best thing for all of us is that we live in our highest timeline for our own soul, and we are faithful and present, and we trust that it's not tied to any one person. Other people come and go, other souls come and go, and we're okay no matter what, because we can find our highest timeline. So for my case, like, I had one, and when I destroyed it, me and that person, our relationship got so much easier, because it was
mm,
a little different, where it was like he felt obligated to always take care of me, and he resented it because of a past life thing. And the minute we got rid of that, and my teacher worked on a little bit of it too, he no longer felt responsible for me, and then he actually showed up more, because
wow,
we could be friends. You know what I mean?
right,
So
right,
it
right,
doesn't mean the person's going to go away. I mean, they could, but if they did, it's actually a gift, because it was never going to work out. It's like, you don't want, that's why I don't like love spells either, because it's the same shit. You don't want someone with you because you manipulated the system. And if you do,
right.
I mean, that's cool, but I'm not your practitioner, because I'm not going to be
Exactly.
down with it. It's freeing up all the ties that bind us, so we can live in our highest timeline. And so you got to know that something better will come in if you let go of the thing that's holding you back. So like in your case, even though it's been years and you've been doing all this work, you were having a really hard time letting go of Dan,
Yeah.
Because of that bond. You can love someone forever and never see them again. And the other thing is too, most of these people, you know, if your soul wants to see them in the next life, they're gonna. You got to trust yourself that you made the decisions about what's going to happen in this life for your highest timeline, and not to be just stuck with. It's romantic in the moment when we agree to be with someone forever in every life, but it's not
Forever.
plausible. You can be,
Right.
I mean, like there's so it's just not plausible. So it's supposed to
Yeah.
free shit up. So when I went down there, he was reluctant, you were reluctant, and he showed up, like his soul, and he was like, look, I don't want to do this, but like I explained to him what it was, and he was like, yeah, okay. And it was so funny because I was sitting next to him by a river, and he was very kind of like it was like a man-to-man talk, and he was like, I don't want to fucking do this, but and I was like, I know, but like we need to so she can move her. And he was like, yeah, okay, I want. And he was like, so we'll do it. And he was like, but, and I said, when I'm done here, so he rewrote it with me, and then I was like, do you want to come back up with me, and then you and her can talk, because like, you know, I can do mediumship between people on the other side. And he was like, no, he was like, I've already been reincarnated, I'm doing toddler shit, I'm a toddler, I'm doing toddler shit, she'll catch up in the next life, like it's cool. But we're, you know, but like she needs to go live her life, and
Yeah.
just tell her to let other people love her. That's
Yeah.
what he said. And I was like, okay. So I came back up and told you that. And then what did you were like, because I didn't know you when he was alive. I really don't know much
Yeah.
about him. So I don't know what his demeanor or energy is like. But that was,
Oh, it was spot on. It was spot on. And actually what made I got so emotional because one thing I really love about Dan was his perspective. It was like short and sweet, but very like on the nose kind of thing. And so everything that you said, I mean, I could just picture like his body language. I mean, it was like I literally felt like I was talking to him in the moment. And of course, it was also exactly what I needed to hear. And that's what I always kind of really loved and appreciated about him. And the fact that he like wouldn't come back up and talk to me.
but
He's
at the
like, "I
same time, like he's
but
always there. He's around. He hears
right,
you, but he's also,
right.
you know,
Yeah, but you know what? I think he almost was like knew in that it wouldn't have served me as well. Like this was just exactly what I needed to hear. And to let people love you, you know, it's really kind of a like not to cheapen it in any way, because I mean this in the best way. It was like a poetic justice, like to rewriting the soul contract is let other people in, let people love you. You know, will always have the love that we have, but we don't have to be bound together in the sense, as you kind of said, Ange, like this responsibility of, you know, taking care of you in every sense of the word, because it does, you know, it's a burden, and especially when someone is no longer here, because I don't think that I really realized how much it was weighing me down. I was like, yeah, he's gone, I know he wants me to move forward, like I don't question that for a second, but just hearing it and having that experience, I think was the final like, you know, push that I needed to be like, okay, this is okay, I'm
I
gonna be
know.
okay.
Okay, can I say something that might make you cry? But I feel like
But
you
sure.
notice, I don't know, I just noticed this. Every time we talk about Dan, you always say he's passed. And
Yeah.
maybe this is just me, but like you don't say he's dead. He died.
Yeah.
Like that's what I would
Well,
use. It's like almost like you don't want to say like, or is that something else?
no, I think I'm like, so I try to be conscientious, like in a forum like this, because being somebody who has been through that, I know it can be really shocking for other people, especially like if they're going through grief,
Okay.
when you say like, oh yeah, he's dead or he died. So I think, and maybe like part of it's a whole other thing, but like I'm trying to be conscientious of, you know, I process my grief how I process my grief, but when I
Yes.
talk about it, try to be conscientious of how I talk about it, because I've been that person who at one point, you're absolutely right, couldn't say those words. Like it would make me, it was just, I couldn't accept it. But now I think it's just more part of my vernacular where I try not to be like, yeah, he's dead, so I'm moving forward. But I know
It's
that.
It sounds, I don't know, to me it sounds a little people pleasy, but that's to each his own. I'm not going to judge
Well,
you.
I mean, that's a whole other session,
But I know people get on me for being, and I admit I probably have autism, and like that might be one of my disconnects, because like my best friend Shelby that died 11 years ago, I'm like, I'll just be talking, I'll be like, oh, my dead best friend, blah blah blah, and people
Yeah.
are like, what? But I just call it. So
Well,
I don't think enough about others because I don't understand it. That's why I kind of asked.
yeah. No, I get it. It's like, but I can also go there too, like on dating apps and stuff, when people are like, "Oh yeah, when was your last relationship?" I'm like, he ghosted me, like literally. He's dead. So, like it's not that I can't go there. I just try to be mindful of my audience.
My partner sleeps with the fishes.
Yeah.
Jesus. Okay, he did not drown. Sorry.
No,
Okay.
no.
But
Yeah, what a pun intended.
Luca Brazzi. So, anyway, yeah, I don't know. Well, okay, so there's that part about it, and then I think too, it helps to just be like, all right. I mean, we all found each other on my TikTok because of this whole twin flame journey, and whatever. I think this helps people to be like, not live as like Delulu for the rest of your life and be like, all right, see, I get why he's here. I get
Yes.
the draw. I get all of it. I get the storyline. I get how it all comes together. I get how it comes together with Dan and my daughter. It all makes sense. However, I no longer am going to spend my days praying and loving myself so much to try to heal, because that means he's going to heal enough to be with me, and I can accept that even though I have a vision for it, I don't know if it's in a different life or a next one or later in this life, but right now he is a menace and he's going to be a
Yes.
menace, and that's not what I
Yes.
want. And I made myself emotionally unavailable by being Delulu, tying all my horses to this one cart. And Dan told me I need to let people love me, and I realized by being hooked on C, I've not been available to let people love me. In the same way, he's unavailable, and that's what I bitch about every day, right? So I mean,
Yes.
that universal story, that's the biggest power in this whole thing, right?
Yeah. Such a power. Such a power. It was, yeah, it's exactly it. I think, and again, that human side of us that wants answers and wants reason and justification. And, this is the perfect solution for that. And we didn't even get into the astrology part of
I'm
it
doing that
yet,
right now.
which,
I'm pulling you up. So like, okay,
okay.
and I did this with a client yesterday too, outside of the session, just because it was a new client, a 44-minute session. I was like, you know what? So like theoretically, I could do this in any session, but it complements us really well. So
Yes.
I'm not an astrologist. I know enough to be dangerous, is what I always say. But I really like focusing on north and south nodes, because your south node tells you about your past lives and what you've already mastered, and your destiny, and so does the north node in a sense on what you're here to do. And so south node also, I believe that whatever your south node placement is, so yours is Libra,
Mhm.
anyone you meet that has Libra in their big six, so especially their sun, moon, and rising, and the more they have, the more this is true. Sun, moon, rising, Mercury, Mars, or Venus. Okay, so that being said, it's so funny because Chelsea's talking to me, and here I am with the biggest Libra stellium, like my sun, Venus, and Mercury. But okay, so anyone that has that placement in their big six is going to be a big karmic lesson for you. They're
Mhm.
there for a good time or an important time, not for a long time, right? So like
Mhm.
in dating, this is why I do quick and dirty astrology and quick and dirty past lives for 1111 on my lives, just because if you're dating someone new, you can be like, how many past lives, what is it, and what's our astrology? Because now, if you find someone with Libra placements like that, they're just here to help you learn something. Like, this is not someone you're going to book a banquet hall and get married to, or if you do, it'll probably be divorce. Like, this isn't
Yep.
your, my client yesterday called it my porch person, like the person that I'm always
Yes.
on a porch
Oh,
with.
I love that. I love that.
It's not your porch person, it's a karmic person, which is
Yeah.
fine because everyone's karmic in a sense, but I don't know. So when I said that, what did that bring up for you in the way of thinking about Libra placements in your life, or what you knew, or like?
I started going like, holy shit. So Dan had a Libra moon. My mom is a Libra sun. And Steve, he had like 3 or 4 Libra placements. We don't know his rising, but he had a Libra stellium. And yeah, it really started like I was like, holy God, this is accurate.
Well, and
I
then on
don't,
what you said too on the flip side, then, and then we looked at
yeah,
the charts of your partners, and one of their south nodes was Leo, and you're all Leo. So it was like, oh, in that case, one of them maybe was my karma, but I was really this person's karma.
exactly. And that actually it still remains to be seen. But I got to tell you, since our session, I have taken things with that person a lot less personally because I'm like, you know what, buddy? This ain't gonna be me crying over you, which maybe is terrible. But
Well, it's good.
you
It's
know,
helpful.
it was helpful. Like I was able to detach from it a little bit. Like I know he's gonna keep coming back and that I felt I had more control. He doesn't have a single Libra placement, by the way, this person that I'm talking about.
Yeah,
But he
which
does have, yeah,
so what that meant for us, for those of you
yes,
following along at home, is that's why he seems she like he doesn't have he's not the karma for her as much as she is the karma for him. So that's why
exactly.
he's historically in their relationship too been so much more triggered by her than she is by him. She's just wanted to be normal with him, and he's always so triggered that it has, and that's why
Yeah.
we think.
Yeah, totally. Like I think we both had like a light bulb moment because when you were I didn't never knew that about South Nodes. Like I had a general understanding, but I didn't know about that placement being, specific to the people in my life that were important and how that would, impact our relationship. So that was it was huge for me. And yeah, and then looking at it on the flip side, I don't know. Again, going back to just the overall theme of the session, it was like, clarification, justification, validation, and logic. Like it just, I felt, okay, I get it now. I get it. And I think, especially if you're someone in spirituality, you believe that we don't have control over many things, but there are things that we do have control over. And as you always say, like, I love it, don't tame cruelty with, wildness.
Yeah, you
And
can't change people.
right.
You
And
can't
like,
you can't bully people into being better.
exactly, exactly. And like another thing that you always say too, it sticks with me. It's like we can't always change what happened to us, but we can change the way we walk with it. And that is something, it's when you reflect on it, you're like, yeah, okay. But when you actually do the work and you start, at least for me, we both have Aquarius moon. So like we like to back up the things that we feel with fact, right? But that's not always possible. I think looking at some of this stuff, astrology, understanding it more has helped me. Yeah, it's just like I said, quench that thirst for the knowledge and the logic. But in that has kind of given me permission to, yeah, just not take things so seriously and be a little bit more comfortable with the uncomfortable or the
Well,
unknown.
and for anyone listening that is actually an astrologist or knows a lot about astrology, okay? And you might be like, well, that doesn't necessarily mean blah blah. The way I use astrology is from a shamanic lens, and I scan a chart and placements and do it like I call it intuitive astrology, the same
Yeah.
way that I do intuitive tarot. Seeing it triggers things that I know about you and your purpose and your life path, and to help, because so shaman really ultimately are death doulas. They help you die a good death aligned with purpose on the day of your choosing. They help, and one of the ways shaman do help is to prepare you for that death by helping you navigate your relationships in this life, because our relationships are where we work out our hooks, our trauma, our healing. It's in relation with other people that we connect to each other and source energy in the earth. Okay, so my Libra stellium and all of my knowledge is I meant to bring in shamanic teachings and help modern men and women heal their relationships in themselves, so they can be in relation with others to prepare for a good death someday. So that being said, that's the way I do it. But the other thing, so Chelsea, we talked about too how you have that north node in the 12th house and the south node in the 6th house. So it means like your personality has a focus on spiritual rather than worldly concerns. And like you that although the practical matters of your everyday life come easily to you, you do not find your true happiness in the pursuit of mundane affairs, but you're constantly looking to seek like expand your horizons mentally, spiritually, and more
Yes.
inclusive content. So like, and it said like we talked about how it's difficult for you to do the everyday things. Like, and
Hmm.
so basically Libra was your past life energy, 6th house Libra stuff. So like you've already done all of that relationship stuff in your past lives. And like in this life, you're meant to not find your mission in a day-to-day routine, but in sacrificing yourself to a higher person and or a higher purpose and like advance beyond the material world and giving up your personal ego. So it's so interesting because you find yourself getting stuck in that day to day, and you have so much Leo that you care about so much how things look, and you're so proud and you're driven. So it was interesting. I don't know, talk a little bit about how us talking about that helps you put it all together about your life's purpose and what you're meant to do and what you're meant to have in a partner. Because the other theme too was throughout your life you're going to be forced to resolve issues with depending on yourself versus
Yes.
depending on other people, and that your relationships, it's like outer events, like you're supposed to take all of your directives from your own higher self and not lean on your relationships in this life. Like that Aries inner energy in this life is more solo, even though other relationships complement you, versus in past lives relationships were a big part of your life. Like hearing that, how did it free you up and make you feel relieved, or like how did that help you to heal and kind of move through all this, I guess?
I think, well, again, on a like deeper level now, and I remember you as you were telling me the description. You're like, how are you feeling? Like it's bringing up a lot for you. And at first it was because I felt like, great, that just means like I'm going to be alone forever. But that's not what it is. And as we've talked through it, it was like, as you said, what it means. And I think you also said, you're doing this, Chelsea. You're doing this. So you need to like just reflect on that and be proud for a moment, because it doesn't mean being alone forever. It means, being able to fulfill my own emotional needs. And basically being with somebody because I want to be, not because I have to be. And I really am trying to do the work, in doing shamanic healings and going to therapy and kind of exploring some of that generational trauma. Having my own daughter and just really taking a hard look at how I relate to the people in my life now, how I rely on them, what I'm like using them for, as terrible as that sounds, but we all do it to a degree. And realizing, I have what I need within myself. And I think, especially since losing Dan, I've really struggled with that because, when you are a we for so long, it is so hard to then become a me or an I. So it just gave me like the confirmation that, a reminder, this is what I've signed up for and I'm doing it. And again, I will find my porch person, I believe, one day, but maybe we don't get married. Maybe we live separately, maybe like we are travel buddies, but like they are on their, whatever. We meet after we each have kids and have been with other people for 20 years and we spend the last 20 together, but again, not in a traditional sense. Because I'm learning how to depend on myself for like my emotional needs, and process my emotional impulses without needing other people to regulate that for me.
Yes, I fucking get
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I wonder, so I kind of have a thing about, I talked to enough people, and the person yesterday who said porch person, it was funny, she was also an Aquarius moon. But
Love
I
that.
and I wonder if Aquarius moons are supposed to have, I wonder if a lot, do any of us have like one monogamous partner our whole life? Like it just doesn't sound like it's something. I mean, I know anything could happen, and astrology is
Right.
just a starting point, but like I just feel like even for me, because I'm so Libra, that's what I've always wanted. But I don't know that I'm built for that. Like, honestly, I had to come to terms for me doing this work on myself. What I got when I was going through the medicine wheel doing this is let people love you, but like, there's always so many people that are romantically falling in love with you that it doesn't need to be one person. Let them all love you. Because for me too, I don't date multiple people at a time usually,
No,
but
me neither.
they
Not capable.
come and go a little more quickly than the average bear, right? But it seems to be it's meant to. I mean,
Right.
Jared, I was with my ex-husband Jared for 13 years, but we were on and off too. Like, I didn't really date in between because I was taking care of my kid. But I think for me, I realized I don't need one love in my life because, but I have love all the time. And I always seem to have an attractive partner around to do things with or to be intimate with when I want to, that cares about me. And
Right.
on the times I don't, I'm probably supposed to focus on my kid or my work. So that's okay, or myself, or,
Yep.
so
Yep.
like now, I can be talking to someone, and if I wake up one morning and I'm like, oh, I didn't hear back from them, I don't go like, is it over? He's not the one. It's not going to be it. I'm like, oh, okay, dope. I'm probably supposed to walk my dog. I do need to do the dishes.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
okay, God, I should be doing something else. And like, I know for my purpose, there's always love there. And I don't, even if that person died or left tomorrow or ghosted me, like another one will come along, or they come back. And like, I have that too. I have a lot of ex-partners that I'm very close with, and
Yeah.
honestly, if I'm single, I could be intimate again. Like, it's not
Yep.
love, it's just like but it's not in a negative way. I guess it's a
No.
tip or a roster, but it's not. I care about a couple of these people, and it's not.
Same.
It doesn't have to be negative. So, like, I think that's
No, same.
once you know what you're supposed to do and you can make peace with who you are, because that's what feels natural for me. It's like, okay, and my family or my friends or my ex-husband can laugh because they're all monogamous people, and they're like, oh, and she'll never settle down. She's a butterfly. But maybe that's actually what makes me happy. I don't like
Right.
having someone around every day. When I
Same.
was married, I was like, oh my God, will everyone just please fucking leave the house for a day? Like, but then I miss them. And then I'm like, okay,
Exactly.
now I'm ready. So for me,
Exactly.
the life I have right now, where I have my kid every other day and I get to take him to and from school, and I usually talk to partners who work a lot or are out of town for work, it's perfect. Because honestly, that one moment a week or whatever that is like, for actually being in person is nice. And then I can go not have to clean my house or be whatever. Like, I don't have to shit on myself when my self-care gets bad and my dishes aren't done, and I don't have an Aries husband being like, why are all the cabinet doors open? Like, it's
Yeah.
not.
That's such an ADHD thing, the cabinet doors
I
being
know.
open.
Or like, I do, like, I have, now they're calling it's ADHD, so like the autism
Yes.
ADHD. Like, I do. So like, some nights I just want to lay on the couch and eat a THC CBD gummy and like watch Silo on Apple Plus. I watch my weird apocalypse situation sci-fi by myself and snuggle my dog. And like,
Yeah.
I don't care if the house is a mess, I'm going to do that first. So like, I prioritize my self-care because that's what I need to do to be like a whole person. And like, partners don't always love that. So maybe maybe for that reason, one long-term committed relationship that I would have to show up for every day is like not right for me, even though that's what I thought I wanted.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think I'm learning that lesson now because even, when I was in a committed relationship, and I think where you're like, oh, I'm Libra. Another thing you said to me too that really stuck out with me is that the universe is always trying to bring things into balance, right? And so
Oh,
that was huge. And it made me think of it when we said Libra, because I was going to say, I think, as you said, the reason why you were wanting, like, or thought you wanted that, single person, it's like, okay, yeah, that's balanced, right? I have a single person, I have a child, I have, from the outside, it looks like I have everything. And I think I was coming at it from a perspective of, my Leo stellium being like, it has to look good from the outside. And so if it looks good from the outside, then I feel good, right? Like letting that external validation drive how I felt and showed up in my, for myself and in my own personal relationships. And so I think of it now, especially after Dan passed, it's like, I do believe that find somebody else, at least, one other person in this lifetime who will be that meaningful to me, it will be in a different way because it should be, right? It's a different
Yeah.
person, different time in my life. I've been through so many things different now. Um, but I have been able to kind of embrace that instead of like fear it, right? And that for me is huge, just that perspective shift of, the universe is always trying to bring things into balance. And so if I'm having a point where this person that I'm talking to right now is not texting me back for a few days, or is, I don't get in my own head about it because it's going to balance out. If not him,
Yeah.
somebody else. And maybe that other person, I'm no longer worried about the timeline because I know that my job in this lifetime is to learn how to show up for me again, even when I feel dysregulated by other people. Like, stop seeking that validation externally, because it's like great while you get the dopamine hit from it, but as soon as that's over, you're looking for the next hit, right? It's like it becomes an addiction. And so just kind of turning that inward, being my own dopamine hit, and
Yeah.
finding solace in that, and not worrying about what it looks like from the outside, because nobody else has to live in this brain or this body or this soul, right? So
Yes.
that was huge for me.
I think that's what I want to say too, because like I haven't talked about this on the podcast because I haven't done a lot of episodes recently, but like since last season of the podcast, even since episode 1, this, but I'll just say it for people at home. I made a lot of changes in my life. Like I went back to therapy for EMDR,
Mhm.
because I was in bed crying more than one day a week. Like I couldn't get on live and do my work. I was, and I knew I was doing this healing journey, and that was all part of it, the shedding, but it had been 3 years. And like, I remember in December saying to my best friend, Danny, like, if I'm still crying like this in a couple months, I'm going to get on fucking meds because I don't think this is spiritual or not, whatever. And I had all this guilt because if you're spiritual enough, you should be able to just rewrite a soul contract, or there's another layer, or there must be something there. And I knew that like, that was going to be mirrored back to me and some of my spiritual friends, and it was, where they were like, well, there's got to be another layer there, and I was like, no, fucking stop it. This is what I'm doing now. So anyway, I am working on my mom's stuff and like childhood stuff that remains a little bit more in EMDR again. I got on Lexapro, so I've been on Lexapro since April, late
Love it.
April, and they upped my dose too. And then I've also got a waitressing job because my therapist said to me, how is this job you're doing and interacting with other people going through the same things you went through, limiting you and your healing?
Yes.
And so I
Yes.
realized I sit in the house all day and talk to other people who are upset about the status of their relationships, and they're sad, or they're pining over someone that's not working out, or and like it, there's a whole world out there, because then around the same time, Rad and I had a Disney World trip planned, which was on my things I had to do before I turned 10. Like that was a big vision that I needed to pull off. So I manifested this year, which I say that and people are like, oh cool, but like that was a big fucking deal that I pulled that off as a single
Yeah.
mom who gets
Single
paid
mom.
child support and owns my own business and like whatever. So we made that happen. um like that's where I say like manifestation is real, because like that's whatever. Anyway, so but while I was there, Chelsea, I just walking around and watching normal people. I mean, it was Disney World, but and
Yeah.
I'm like, there's a whole fucking world out here of people interacting and watching all the kids that work there meeting each other and falling in love and talking to someone, because I talk to everyone everywhere I go,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
dating, and like you can meet a new person tomorrow. There's billions of people on this planet, and you could have a whole new life with them. Like I wasn't leaving my house, and I was just talking to the same niche people every day, and I was stuck in it. So I was like,
Right.
I gotta
Right.
get out of my fucking house. So I got a job waitressing in a bar that's a family bar and grill that's very much like the bars my dad owned when I was little. And a side note, that's something I'm working on in
Yeah.
EMDR, growing up in a bar. So here's my mirror of me. I do, but I feel better being in a bar once a day. I don't drink anymore, by the way. I haven't drank in 6 months, but I like being in the
That's
bar, and
awesome.
it doesn't trigger because I don't drink because I fall because I have a knee injury. That's a whole nother thing. And then I cry that I fell. But
Yeah.
so what I'm saying is I made all these little changes, and I feel so much better. But it's because I became grounded in reality by looking at you have to know your story, your past lives, this life, what your core wounds are. You have to know what makes you happy. And then you
Yep.
have to deal with that and heal it yourself. And your partner, and this is where all of us anxious girlies and guys get it wrong. Your partner or a new person you're dating or is not going to make you happy. They're not the person that you emotionally dump your sadness on to cheer you up. They're not.
Yeah.
And so like, don't, I went on a date with a guy once and he was like, I just have such a hard time dating because, you date someone once and then all of a sudden you become their therapist and I don't want to do that. I go, ooh, that's actually very healthy. And he was like,
Yes.
and I'm like, okay, Brenda, I took you to the Olive Garden once and now you're calling me telling me you're sad because your aunt has cancer. Like, I don't mean to be an asshole, but like, it's not fucking appropriate. And I was like, oh, I've
It's
done
so
that.
true though. It's so true.
Until
It's so true.
for the first 6 months, don't make the person you're talking to your therapist. I'm not saying you need a bullshit, but if you're like, well, that's who I am, well, then maybe you're not emotionally available for a relationship, because your life is for feminine. You live your life, you do your own healing work, you find joy and happiness, that what fills you up, so that on the day you have a date, you can show up and you can be fun and sexy and actually enjoy it. And then you go back to
Exactly.
focusing on yourself. And then what that does for masculine energy is they're supposed to build, they're supposed to work, they're doing things with their life, and they come and they're energized by your femininity and your intuition,
Right.
and then
Right.
they go back to building. And I don't mean to sound like a traditionalist, but this is what I believe. So that's what makes us feel so I think that's where a lot of us are getting it wrong. And I think this kind of work helps you know your story, separate it out,
Totally.
understand your purpose, understand your karma, so you can, and then you can build your own life. Because I'm much happier now, where I love my little Delulu life that I wander through. And I'm not going to partner up with someone until they are like, all right, you being in my life more helps me to go build and grow for us and be a better man. And that's why I would ultimately start merging lives. But I'm going to fight like hell to keep my own little safe, protected, healed existence going until someone can add value to that. And if I have to sort through 1,000 partners, I'm okay with that, right? It's a
Exactly.
triad.
Exactly.
It's a
It's a
triad.
try-on. Exactly. And I think it's such an important point too about, the not like trauma dumping, so to speak, on somebody, in those first few months, especially
We've all
just
done it.
showing up. Oh yeah, we've all done it. Like, yeah, shame spiraling, not really. But I think what I've learned is exactly as you said, that, I thought that when I was doing those things, that was emotional availability. But what I realize now is it was an inability to cope with my own emotional dysregulation. Like,
Yes.
of course, you're going to talk to your partner about things, but when you start a relationship with that kind of dynamic, it's like the expectation becomes that this person has to take care of you in every sense of the word, and that is a burden. Yes, you want to be there for your partner, whatever, and there is, of course, there has to be a reciprocity, but in like an emotional sense too. And you can't bleed all over people and then expect them to be able to, like, again, you're just putting your emotional regulation on other people, and you're not looking inward, and you're not managing it on your own. And I just have to say that, because like I said, for so long I thought that I was emotionally available and I didn't
Yeah.
realize the difference. And like that kind of was the light bulb for me, and I had to really put myself in other people's shoes, like, and for a while I was, and I like to fix things for people, right? Especially
Yes.
people I love. But I again realized that that was just me avoiding my shit too. Like,
Yeah.
not doing the work, not sitting with it, not regulating myself, focusing on other people and other things, trying to fix them, and then in turn expecting them to do the same thing for me without ever having to really confront it. And it just doesn't work like that. You're
Yep.
never going to find someone, or you're never going to be in a happy relationship, whatever that looks like to you. Like
Yeah.
you're saying, maybe for us, it's no longer like the white picket fence and the golden retriever and the 2.5 children and the big house, like,
No.
7 days a week. And like, I thank God, like, I am actually liberated by the thought that I don't have to have that, and I can still be happy. And that, like, where I'm going now, what I'm looking for now is actually so much truer to like who I am and what I want and what I need. So I think, it's just overall like this whole session really kind of put the bow on it for me in a way where it was like, yeah, this just makes sense and it feels right. And it gave me the permission to kind of
Mm.
move forward, both with the loss in my grief, personally, emotionally. I just have a different perspective of things. And again, one that is much more true to like how I really feel and what I really want in my life. So, it was honestly life changing for me. And I hope it's that for other people too. I'm sure it will be.
Yeah, I mean, like, this is a part of the work that we do on ourselves, or I did during the directions, and it helped me a lot too. But like, I think there's so many aspects of it. It's like, your healing journey is so many little things. It's like death by 1,000 cuts, but healing by 1,000. I don't know what is a
Yeah,
band-aids, but or
totally.
it's not band-aids, but
Totally.
you know what I mean. So it's like you gotta. But manifestation is real in the way that our story is, we get what we expect in life. Like,
Yes.
if you expect
Yes.
everything to be terrible, it's going to be terrible. If you expect,
Exactly.
like, and so sometimes our own trauma and wounding it makes our story take us to left field. So you got to know your coordinates and know where you are, so you can know what's just story, and you choose not to believe it anymore. Like, I know,
Yes.
and a lot of us in this collective, we have a lot of trauma in this life and in past lives, and it's always going to be there. And so,
Mhm.
like, for me, there's a lot of trauma around not trusting men in my family stuff. And so when I bump up against that, I look at it and I'm like, there's my story again. I'm just going to choose not to believe that anymore, because I know that it's a loving, generous universe and things can work out. So it's like, part of it is
Yes.
knowing your story, right? And this is what helps with this, so that it's not like you'll never feel it again, but you just don't have to align with it consciously.
Exactly. Exactly. As you say, you can change the way you walk with it, right? And like that was I think like so many Ange-isms, as I like to call them, because what you say has stuck with me. As I said, I've said a few of them today, but how you walk with things, you can change that always. You can know your story, but remember that the universe is always, trying to bring balance. And so if you go forward with, just it sounds kind of cheesy, be true to yourself, but we say that as a society while thinking that we don't have to actually look at what that means. And that's, I think, where people are going wrong. You have to really look at that and know it and examine it and decide how you are going to move forward, I think, to find true happiness and your
And it,
purpose.
and it
And
means just saying my partner died. No.
yeah.
Just kidding. I love you.
He's dead. He's dead. No,
Thank you.
Dan is dead. Dan is dead.
I'm
Yes.
the worst friend ever, but I love you so
No, you're
much.
not. I
I know
love
you
you
got to
too.
get back to work, but I love you, and thank
I
you for
love you.
sharing your story today.
Thank you for having me. I love you so much.
All right, Chelsea,
All
I'll
right.
talk to you later.
All right. Bye.
Bye.